On everybody, Curtis Wilkerson, Andrew Ellis with Inside Arkansas, back with you again. Following Arkansas's 39-31 overtime loss at Oklahoma State, we're outside Boone Pickens Stadium, where it's cleared out a little bit and it looks a little bit sad around here, and I think all Razorback fans are sad with that final result. But here we are for what we're going to call an accountability session, because before each game we host a pod of that nature, a pregame preview, and we talk about some different things. We talked about must-win position battles for the Razorbacks. We issued some challenges to some key players that we thought really needed to step up for the Hogs. And then we made some bold predictions, so we're going to run it back and see what we were right about, wrong about. We're going to take accountability for things that made us look stupid. So here we are. Andrew, we started with these must-win position battles, and the one that I think really stood out to us from the start, or I guess the two, is the trenches. The game is always won or lost in the trenches, and it was a little bit of, I don't know, kind of a mixed bag. Tale of two halves, maybe? I don't know. What was your take on the O-line, D-line situation?
There was a lot of talk about men amongst boys, and that's what it really felt like early in this game.
I tweeted it,
and
look,
so it's not like we're these crazy homers that just like view this thing through a rose-colored lens or anything, Curtis. Arkansas had 350 yards of offense in the first half. They're on pace for 700 and held Oklahoma State to 77 yards. Ollie Gordon never got going in this game, finished with 47 yards on 1,000 carries, less than 3 yards per carry. You know what's crazy? I actually said 2.9 after the first play of the game, or the Ollie Gordon got stuffed. Yeah. I was like, 2.9 yards a carry. This guy stinks. Turned out to be 2.9 yards a carry. So I feel good about what I feel like Arkansas on both sides of the ball. Offensive line held up pretty well for the most part. Now, I know there were some brutal sacks. You can kind of divert blame either way there, some on Taylor and some on them, whatever the case may be. Some blitzes they got home, but they did
run the hell out of it.
They ran the hell out of it. Damn near 300 yards of rushing. Taylor Green and Jaquinton Jackson each had plenty of room. Even Rodney Hill broke loose for a few runs. And Arkansas, there were several times, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11. At one point, you told me that Arkansas was 11 of 10 on 3rd down, and I didn't fact check you, but I believe you because you never tell lies to me.
That's right.
But Arkansas, time and time again, in those obvious passing downs, it's easy to protect for your quarterback on play action, or when it's 2nd and 2, or when you've got these guys behind the chains, or when you're even running the ball like Arkansas was doing. And we saw plenty of that, but there were a lot of times where it was like, hey, 3rd and 11, Arkansas needs a completion here. We saw a big one to Isaac TeSlaa. We saw a big one to Tyrone Broden there in the first half. We saw a big one to Satania. Like, time and time again, Armstrong was getting open. He converted several 3rd downs. Arkansas was able to protect. Their offensive line, I felt pretty good about in this game. It's hard to complain too much aside from a few nitpicks here and there. And defensively, they certainly didn't allow Oklahoma State's offensive line, that 6-year group, to push them around at all. I feel like some of the issues may have lied in our other position battle, which was Arkansas's secondary against these Oklahoma State wide receivers a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That was kind of the other big area that we were focused on there, was how would this Razorback secondary respond to their first test of the season, because they just weren't tested against UAPB. Oklahoma State, Bowman, their quarterback is not the most accurate in the world, no. Prone to making some mistakes, but he's got some very talented guys on the outside receivers, and we just didn't know about Arkansas. I think we felt really good at corner with Jalen Braxton, but then there's just been this weird deal with that other corner spot, and then the safeties were tested as well. I thought after the first drive, Arkansas was kind of getting nickel and dime down the field a little bit. They wind up getting the stop. And then after that, for the rest of the first half, they really shut things down. I was really impressed with it. It opened up in the second half. Bowman kind of looked like a different player at times there. And so I'm not sure that I would say Arkansas won that one, the way it went down at the end. Giving up some chunk plays. How many yards did Bowman throw for? 326?
326 yards is what he ended up with.
Yeah.
Which is not a small amount. Now, he did throw a good bit.
Right.
And a lot of it came in the second half. He had like 50 yards at halftime.
He did, yeah. And Jaheim Singletary gets the start at the opposite corner position for Arkansas. We'll talk a little bit more about why that happened in a second. But they really picked on him, and they picked on that right side of the field. They really only tested Braxton a handful of times, but they were really, really going after that right side of the field. And then Presley, the kind of go-to receiver, the speedy guy there for him, was targeted how many times? 19
times.
19 targets they were
under
throwing
50%. He only caught 9, but he made some big plays, made Arkansas pay a good bit.
Yeah, unreal, man.
Danico Slaughter had a tough time, I feel
He did,
like.
yeah.
Stat sheet says what it is. I think he had 6 tackles and 2 pass breakups or something like that, but he was called for at least 13 pass interference calls. Had a good time.
One.
They ran a lot of those rub routes, getting Arkansas's guys out on the edge, which last year was kind of like in the flat, like those tight ends on those outbreaking routes was kind of the weak spot of this Arkansas defense, and we saw a little bit of that. But I do want to give a shout out to Jalen Braxton because he did not record a tackle in this game, Curtis, and it's rare when you say it's a good thing when a defensive player did not record a tackle, but he did record 2 pass breakups. He allowed the touchdown, which got called back due to the chop block, which we were a little confused about in the moment because couldn't hear anything the refs were saying. But I did want to give a shout out to Jalen Braxton because he's clearly a bright spot on this Arkansas defense, which has, by the way, no shortage of like promising pieces around it at every level, really. And Jalen Braxton is kind of the guy teams are starting to figure out we shouldn't test him. He had to leave the game for a little bit, and there were some times where Arkansas had Keon Stewart and Jaheim Singletary at corner, which frankly is not what you want if you're Arkansas.
That's tough.
And, you know, we got to give a shout out to our boy Hat Trick Huddy. He was not the problem. I know a lot of people hate Hudson Clark. He was not the issue. He had a couple nice little plays there. Jaden Johnson, I thought, held up really well. And so it's like
TJ Metcalf had a great game.
TJ Metcalf was making a lot of tackles, some of which were downfield. But you look around the Arkansas secondary, and it's not like, oh, slim pickings here. Oh, we got this guy here. But just overall down the stretch, Oklahoma State was able to find their connection with those receivers. And so it's hard not to give them the win in this matchup, considering how many plays they made down the stretch. And frankly, that's what these games come down to, is if you make plays down the stretch. And the Cowboys did that in the passing game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We issued some challenges to some Razorbacks we thought were going to be key to this game beforehand, so let's run those back a little bit. It was interesting for me. The first one I threw out there was to Cuddy, to Marquise Robinson, after he went viral. For some of his quotes that were earlier in camp, but obviously Oklahoma State fans got wind of him on game week after what he did to those guys right here, actually, last year with South Alabama. He didn't play, so challenge not accepted because he didn't play. He was there, had his jersey on, but I don't think he ever took the field.
What's weird is he suited up pregame because we saw him when we were walking into our seat. We can kind of see, oh, hey, we saw the players right there. Hey, there's 13. There's Marquise Robinson. Then I don't know what happened, if he got tweaked something in pregame, whatever. And obviously we didn't get a chance to hear from Sam Pittman. I'm sure he maybe spoke on it. But I think that's a big factor in this game. If you're an Arkansas fan that wants to make some excuses, wants to look, say, hey, we didn't have our number 2 corner, and they ended up picking on the other guy, who, by the way, Jaheim Singletary did come up with the pick. We got to give him his prop there. But, yeah, it definitely was – his presence, Marquise Robinson's, was definitely missed, and he's the kryptonite for Oklahoma State. Arkansas didn't have their kryptonite out, so how are you going to beat Superman?
That's the difference in the game. People were talking. I also issued a challenge to Landon Jackson just to, it was a quiet game for him against UAPB. He didn't take that many snaps. He didn't need to do anything miraculous there, but would have liked to seen him just be a little bit more disruptive, be a force, look like that first-team All-SEC kind of guy in this game, and I don't really recall seeing too much out of him. Did he wind up getting anything done late? Because I think it was a pretty quiet first half for him for sure.
He ended up with 2 total tackles, neither of which were for loss, and I don't believe either of them were solo tackles either. So he's kind of in the mix a little bit. Now, we should acknowledge this is a little bit of a tough matchup for defensive linemen because they like to get the ball out quick.
Exactly.
A lot of their throws were within 2 seconds after the snap, and so we didn't expect Arkansas to have 3 or 4 sacks, but there were multiple times where you're kind of like, hey, huge third down here. You'd really like someone to come through and make a huge play for this Arkansas defense.
I did see
Landon Jackson's the best player on the defense.
I did see one play in particular that really surprised me, where Landon Jackson actually dropped back in coverage, and then he had a collision with somebody there in the secondary, and Oklahoma State got a conversion. That might be the first time I've seen that happen. I don't know, but at any rate, it is what it is. And the other challenge that I issued was actually to Bobby Petrino, because I wanted him to see Isaiah Satania force that man the ball, feed your stud early and often, and it wound up being, aside from the muff punt there that was a tough break for Arkansas, Satania had a nice game, I thought, in the receiving department. Yeah,
finishes with 4 for 78. He's kind of that big play target. I believe last week his one catch was 32, 33 yards, and he had one that got called back. So I think he's going to be a guy that can bring a spark to this Razorback offense. I was glad to see them go to him a few times. He made a couple catches, one on a huge third down where it was kind of a little bit behind him and he had to adjust. You see the athleticism there. You see why they like him. I mean, this guy holds every skill set you would want in a playmaker on offense. Got to catch those punts, Isaiah. We love you, man, but you got to catch those punts. But from that perspective, from the challenge that you issued, which was to Petrino and the offense to get him going, I would say they accepted that challenge, and it was a success in that regard. Again, guys, we're not ignoring the fact that he dropped a huge punt, and it was a huge reason why Arkansas lost a brutal road game. But we're just holding ourselves accountable for our pregame challenges, and I feel like that was a challenge accepted, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Who all did you throw some challenges at?
I threw a challenge at Taylon Green, which I know, a little bit low-hanging fruit to say, hey, quarterback, we need you to play well.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. I feel like he rose to the occasion. That same friend I referenced, who's a ball knower PFF guy, he said he was impressed with Taylon Green. That's enough. I feel like nationally, last week he caught a lot of attention for his performance, and people kind of realized, hey, Arkansas's got this really athletic quarterback. His athleticism is such a game changer, Curtis, and teams will probably adjust and kind of figure out ways to maybe bottle him up and have answers for that.
It didn't look that much different against Oklahoma State today than it did last week against UAPB. That's what I hope to see. He's a bad man.
I'll tell you, man. Looked like Taylon Daniels out there, man. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Jaden Daniels in the way that he would just find a seam and it's just boom. And it's like, oh, 3rd and 8. Oh, you bring pressure from this side, and oh, he finds a seam there. And weirdly enough, you know, it's a very different running style than KJ Jefferson that the Hog fans are accustomed to. The kind of between the tackles, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You can just lean on him in the trenches there. He's not that guy, although he did run through the middle of that defense plenty. But it's really like those scrambles when he finds open space. Once he gets to top speed, man, he is really tough to track down, really tough to make, really tough to, you know, he's making defenders miss. And I was impressed with him throwing the ball through air, through land, through whatever.
Sea.
Through sea as well. I'm sure he's a great ship captain. I'm sure he would be great. His leadership would be on display there. But really, I mean, he wasn't perfect. And we can go back and nitpick all we want, and we will. 58% of his passes, the accuracy is kind of the big question, and there were a couple misses that I'm sure he would love to have back. One to Rodney Hill in that overtime period that really was a tough one. Could have put the game away right there.
Took some brutal sacks, and that's not all on him. But in some key moments, took some sacks there that were tough. There's also some communication things that they're going to really need to clean up. A good handful of times, he took the snap, turn to either hand the ball off or, you know, do the play action, and there was just nobody there. Like, whether it was him turning the wrong way or his back going the wrong way or whatever, like, there's some weird miscommunication going on there. Although the one play that stuck out the most to me was when he turned and handed the ball to nobody. There's literally nobody there. And then he just up the gut 15 yards and converts a 3rd down. So that was a pretty impressive play. So you definitely have something to work with there, but a lot to work on for sure. He's still not a polished product just yet.
I mean, honestly, I hate to say that he's been what we've expected, because I definitely didn't expect him to throw for 416 yards in his 2nd game as a Razorback, especially against a legitimate opponent here. But we see the full kind of spectrum, which we said last week, of like he shows you the good, he shows you some of the bad. But overall, I think Hog fans should feel pretty good about their quarterback. He's definitely a much better player than he was at Boise State. There's no doubt about that. I'll let someone else decide if he's better than KJ Jefferson. I'm not going to have those conversations and pit 2 Black Kings against each other. That's not what we do here. But for the most part, Arkansas can win with Taylon Green. I think there's no doubt about that. He's going to make plays against a lot of these teams. He's going to be a handful for SEC defenses to account for. My other challenge I issued was to Andrew Armstrong. Just said, hey, Andrew, just play ball. We want to see you play some ball. Just go up there and show up. And boy, did he show up. 10 receptions, 164 yards. Hard to ask for much more out of that guy, man. He's a monster.
He's a bona fide #1. And the gist I'm getting here is they heard you, they did not hear me. I mean, it's pretty much where we're at, I think, with these challenges.
I was called the songbird of our generation earlier when we were on the way, whenever you posted that video of me singing it. So I don't know, maybe my voice just echoes throughout Razorback Stadium and they're picking it up. I don't know.
It could be it. That could absolutely be it.
Am I the quarterback whisperer? Y'all thought it was Bobby Petrino. It's me. I'm the quarterback whisperer.
People are talking.
Speaking of whispering to quarterbacks, let's get to our bold predictions, Curtis, because I made a weird one, which I gave you the Saracen prop if you watch our YouTube short that we put out about some of the specials that we liked, and the Taylon one where I think he had to get 264 passing yards, 55 rushing yards. Got that with ease, but I predicted him to throw for 300 yards. I thought it would be a little bit of a track meet. If you had shown me this final score, I'd have been like, yeah, it's what I expected. I didn't expect it to look the way it did, but he ends up with 416 yards, so I'm going to give myself a check mark in that one.
Yeah.
But you nailed one of your bold predictions as well.
Yeah, unfortunately. The bold prediction that I had, my main one was I felt like at the end of this game, we were going to be able to look back at one play on special teams and say, ooh, yeah, that was the difference. A memorable one. Well, there were several in this game, right? I mean, obviously the muff punt there is one that comes to mind in a very, very, very big way. But the entire dynamic of the field goal situation down the stretch of that game,
both sides
in overtime, both sides. The kicking situation was unreal. That was just absolute insanity. And then being there, and by that time we had got to Eskimo Joe's and we were starting to set up. And so we're kind of monitoring the situation on our phones, and we're listening. But then we're also watching like the adjacent bars that are across the street. and seeing, you know, fans go from going nuts because Arkansas missed one to surrender Cobra because Oklahoma State misses one. That was absolutely crazy. So, yeah, special teams was a mess. And, you know, hey, for all those Scott Fountain haters out there, they got a little bit of ammo after this one, even though he can't make the kick for you and he can't field the punt for you. But man, you just keep seeing snafus on that side of the ball, and it's problematic for sure. In terms of other bold predictions,
let's talk about the bad ones now.
Yeah, another one that I had was that Rashad Dubinion would be second on the team in carries. I don't think he got one. So, and maybe he's not fully healthy yet. He was there. We saw him, right?
Yeah, we definitely saw him.
Yeah, Rodney Hill was definitely that guy. I don't think Braylon Russell recorded a carry either. It was Jaquindon Jackson and Rodney Hill show, I think. Is that about right?
Yeah.
You remember anybody else? Yeah.
I didn't see Braylon Russell.
Jordan Anthony got like a jet sweep or something. But yeah.
But yeah, Rodney Hill was kind of the very clear number 2 back too. It wasn't really a split 50-50 thing there. I mean, Jaquindon Jackson, 24 rushes, got a reception in there. Rodney Hill made a couple nice little plays in the passing game. Probably should have had another one in that overtime period. But yeah, it was a one-man show with a little bit of Rodney Hill mixed in there.
Yeah, there you go.
But also, I guess I should mention, I did also call for 3 Arkansas turnovers. What I meant by that was Arkansas would take the ball away 3 times. I did not mean give it away, Arkansas. Y'all didn't listen close enough.
They just misunderstood. Yeah.
Again,
selective hearing.
We'll get it sorted out with the boys. This will not happen again. But yeah, I thought Arkansas would get 3 turnovers, and I said to you when we were walking in, I said, win the turnover battle, win the game. I know I'm not breaking any news here. Winning the turnover battle helps you win the game, but the team that won the turnover battle here won the game, and it's hard to ignore that. That was pretty much the only thing standing in the way of Arkansas in victory.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. Like I said, we're going to do this after every game where we make these bold predictions. We issue challenges. We talk about these must-win position battles. And we're going to hold ourselves accountable, win or loss, after every game. Obviously, not as fun as we thought this was going to be at about halftime when Arkansas was absolutely dominating. But I guess some of you might be numb to this by now because it's just a pain that we continue to feel as Razorback fandom and people who follow this program. So a lot of football left to be played, but a frustrating one for the Razorbacks. They fall to 1-1 on the season, and they'll finally play a game in Fayetteville next week against UAB, and hopefully they can kind of right the ship. But we'll see, and we'll continue to.
They can right that ship.
Listen, man, we've seen some crazy things. Were you at that Liberty game? I was. We've seen some wild things happen, so I'm not going to guarantee.
It's the trap game of all trap games.
It's the trap game of all trap games, my man. But hey, appreciate everybody for tuning in and rocking with us as always. Got some good stuff coming your way. Continuing to break this game down. We're gonna have a therapy session for you on Sunday after you sleep on it. We'll see if that makes you feel better or not. I don't know if it's going to make John feel better. Hey, listen, if you're listening to this right now, you see John's not here. We don't know where he's at. We're worried about him.
We got a manhunt on our
The man is in a bad place. We're frustrated. We're irritated, but we're going to make the best of it. But we got to take care of him. Don't worry. I'm going to drive home so he doesn't run us off the road and off a bridge. At any rate, for Andrew Ellis, this has been Curtis Wilkerson from Inside Arkansas.